Hello, I'm Justice Jennifer Brunner, candidate for Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, and you're here with me today and my guest, Michelle Cordova, for our series, Achieving Justice. Welcome, Michelle Cordova. I'm so happy that you're here with us today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
So, Michelle Cordova has got fantastic experience. Many years as a magistrate in the family court, many years as a prosecutor, a great public service record. Why don't you go ahead and give folks a little bit more background about what you've done and where you're going?
Thank you. I had the opportunity during law school to spend 3 years as an intern with the Akron City Prosecutor's Office, and I just loved it. So my dream job upon graduation was a prosecutor's office. And I was lucky enough to land in Stark County, where I grew up. And I've been a prosecuting attorney ever since, so for 25 years. First, I started out in juvenile. I spent about 5 years in the adult criminal division, prosecuting serious felony cases. And for a time, I was the designated child sex abuse prosecutor. I spent a few years in the civil division, and then I was appointed chief of the juvenile division, where I spent 16 years in family court, which is the court that I'm running for now. So as chief juvenile prosecutor, I had the pleasure of supervising 5 other attorneys and a number of administrative staff and interns and a victim advocate in prosecuting juvenile delinquency cases. So during that time, I was lucky enough to be a member of the team that created the juvenile drug court that exists now. I developed with the chief magistrate at the time a specialized truancy docket, really recognizing that truancy is sort of at the heart of all delinquency. We started a program it's called Safe Harbor for victims of human trafficking, which is mandated by the federal government. And most recently, I developed a first-time traffic offender diversion program, which is sort of a very low level of offense, but it really has been successful in making juveniles better drivers, rather than just putting points on their license and sending them back out on the roads.
Oh, that's fantastic. So tell people how does the juvenile drug court operate? Because I think people have some familiarity with adult drug courts, but how is it different for juvenile?
That's a great question. We spent a week in Boston to develop the program, and it is based on the same model as an adult drug court program, but we recognize that juveniles are very different than adults. First of all, there's a family component that adults don't necessarily have. So a lot of it is building up the support system within that juvenile's family. And it actually, they accept both misdemeanor and felony offenses. Youth don't often have the same sort of rock bottom awakening that adults do and recognize that they need help, because they've usually got someone to fall back on in their family. So building that support system with their family and then giving them their own coping skills. A lot of people, I'm sure you know, have substance abuse because they also have mental health issues. And so addressing that component is a really big part of juvenile drug court. And once those youth have completed the program, they graduate and hopefully go on to lead successful lives without the felony or misdemeanor conviction that they would have had otherwise.
Interesting. So does it necessarily involve bringing in their support people, their families, or whomever is someone they lean on?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a dedicated probation officer, a dedicated counselor, mental health folks that are all involved, kind of wrapping themselves around that kid to provide the support they need in the program and developing their own skills and their family's support skills in order to keep going once they complete the program. And it's usually between a year and 18 months, typically older juveniles. And they start out coming to court once a week, seeing their probation officers much more often, and being drug tested more frequently. And then as they reach certain milestones, we back off and see them every 2 weeks and then eventually once a month. And the supervision sort of tapers off as well once they've proven that they're on the right track.
Interesting. So the work that you had to do on the sex abuse cases, I think it's hard on a prosecutor to see some of the things that they see. Is that something somebody can do for a long period of time, or is it good to kind of share that?
Yeah, I think we definitely recognize that isn't a great idea for a long period of time. I was in that role about 3 years, and I had 2 young children at the time, and I definitely noticed it affecting the way I was as a parent. It's really hard not to bring those things home with you. But at the time, this would have been in the late 90s, we didn't really recognize the secondary trauma that we do now. And so there's a lot more opportunities for continuing education and self-care for prosecutors, defense attorneys, for all the things that we experience in our jobs so that we don't take it home with us as much. It was
Great.
so rewarding though. And actually some of the offenders that I sent to prison during that time period are still there with 25 and 30-year sentences.
Yeah, I think that crime affects our community's psyche, as one of the worst forms of crime that people can envision.
Absolutely. And that kind of trauma stays with the victims the rest of their lives. And ideally, they'll learn to cope with it, but they will never be the same again.
Yeah. So it seems like with your work as a magistrate and then also as a prosecutor, I know when I was a trial court judge, we were focused on drugs and alcohol and mental health. But then just as I was leaving the bench as a trial judge, they're really starting to look at the question of trauma. How do you think that's grown in the court system now, especially when it comes to working with juveniles?
Well, first, I've always been a prosecutor. I've not been a magistrate. But one of the judges that I worked with, and that's, excuse me, Judge Mike Howard, was sort of, he went to a conference many, many years ago and learned about trauma. And he brought that back to Stark County and really made sure that every professional in Stark County had the opportunity for trauma-informed care training, and recognizing how much trauma affects both juveniles who are in court for delinquency and adults who may be in court for either a divorce or custody or dependency, neglect, or abuse of their children. Now that we have more tools in our toolbox to work with folks that are dealing with trauma, it just opens up a much bigger world of possibilities for those folks to get treatment that they need. And it also informs the way we sentence juvenile delinquents. Sometimes rather than incarceration or placement, we can find programs in the community that they can participate in to help them with their trauma while they remain either with their family or in whatever foster situation they're placed in.
And sorry for me getting those positions a little mixed up there.
That's okay.
So when you say placement, would that mean taking them out of the home, or?
Sometimes that does happen, and ideally, an out-of-home placement, especially for juveniles who have been accused of or adjudicated for a sex offense. Sometimes they're placed with another family member until that family can recover and reunite. So there's a wide range of placements available: family placement, foster care placement, and then of course, group homes. And our county is part of a multi-county juvenile attention system, which has both a state community corrections facility and a local detention facility and some other group home facilities that are sort of all part of the same campus.
Yeah, so for people watching, this is Michelle Cordova, who is running for family court judge in Stark County. And Stark County is in Northeast Ohio, and Canton is the major city that you think of in Stark County. So has Stark County been your home for all of your life?
Yes, well, mostly. My parents were both born here. My father attended Georgia Tech, so I was born there, but we moved back when I was very young. So I've been here since third grade. And so it's the only home I really remember. And I went away for college to Ohio University, and then I just north of us to Akron for law school. And I met my husband in college, and he got his first job here with Sherwin-Williams. And so we moved back and started raising our family as soon as I graduated from law school.
And so you told me you have 4 children. That's amazing.
Yes, they're a lot of fun. And so 2 are grown. Our oldest lives in Houston and works for NASA. Our second oldest is married and just moved to Norton with her husband. We have a college student who is a Young Life camp leader this summer. And we have a high school student who is working at Camp Tippecanoe.
Oh my, oh my. And so for once you have a quiet summer.
It's very quiet.
Except for campaigning.
Yes. And you know as well as I do how busy that is. It's fun. I really enjoy it.
So this is your first campaign, isn't it?
Yes, my first campaign, although I have worked with others on their campaigns. I worked with the Stark County Prosecutor on probably 8 different campaigns over the years that I was there. Several other colleagues of mine, friends of mine who've run for and become judges, and other local officials as well. So I've had a lot of experience from the outside. This is the first time it's me.
Yes. So are you enjoying it?
I am. And, you know, you always think that you know so much about your hometown and your community, but then when you canvass the entire county, you learn things that you didn't know. And it's just been a really great experience. It reminds me a little bit of when I graduated from leadership Stark County and learned so much about the things that are going on that we don't necessarily see every day. You know, we kind of tend to stay in our neighborhood that we live in and the neighborhood that we work in and don't go out a lot. But this is really an incentive to get out there and meet the people and experience a lot of the really wonderful new things that Stark County has to offer.
Yeah, that's amazing. So actually Stark County's recognized you lately in 2019, a YWCA Leadership Award. Can you talk to me about that?
Yes, thank you. I was inducted to the YWCA Women's Hall of Fame, and I was nominated by a judge that I know very well, really for leadership. And part of that was because I've been a new lawyer mentor with the Ohio Supreme Court program for the last 10 years. And as a leader in my office, I supervised 88 interns during the 16 years that I was the juvenile division chief. And of those interns, we hired 13 of those folks who as attorneys. And so it's been such an honor to watch them grow into their careers, and you know, they keep in touch. And outside of work, I'm a volunteer with the Refuge of Hope, which is a men's homeless shelter in Canton. And they also serve meals to the community 6 days a week. So I've been serving meals and sorting clothing for donations for years. And that was recognized as part of my leadership. I'm now I'm the president of the board of the Refuge of Hope.
Oh, congratulations. And they're lucky too.
Thank you.
So, you know, I think a lot of times people look at a judicial candidate and they try to sort of project in their imagination what they would be like if they were on the bench. Judicial demeanor is something that really can't be taught too easily. Do you think?
I agree. And my demeanor at home with my kids isn't necessarily the same as it is at work. But one of the things that I always strived for as a leader is a calm, thoughtful approach to the way I counseled and taught the staff that I was training. Juvenile court is very often the starting point for new lawyers. And I always wanted to make sure that they understood that I had their back at all times and I would support them. But I also walked through cases with them to make sure that they had the confidence to make the difficult decisions themselves. And 25 years of making difficult decisions has really equipped me to be on the bench and to make the same kind of difficult decisions from a different perspective as a judge.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I am so happy that you could join me today. It's been very interesting. I have a farm myself about 25 minutes from Canton, so I've really grown to appreciate that part of the state and grown to love the history and the people there. So I wish you the very best in this election, and I'm so glad that you took the time to come on this little podcast with me today so that people can get a chance to know who you are and imagine what you would be like as their next family court judge in Stark County. So thank you. This has been Michelle Cordova and Jennifer Brunner with Achieving Justice. And thank you all for taking the time to watch today.